everybody. So glad you could join me again this week to bring a little bit of camp home with you guys. In the past couple weeks, we brought home some of the sights with our tents and the smells of our campfire, but one thing that may really be missing is the taste of camp. And one of those that really goes for me are hobo dinners. So pretty much hamburgers and vegetables cooked in a packet of foil or whatever else you like to put in them. So today, we're gonna go through and make one of our classic versions of our hobo dinners. So this here is some basic ingredients, but you can really put in whatever you want into your hobo dinner. So what I'm gonna be using today is I'm gonna have a little bit of olive oil, garlic salt, and red pepper to season it with. You of course need some aluminum foil to cook in. I've got a cutting board and a knife. Now, make sure you check with an adult before you use a knife. If you need an option that doesn't involve a knife, one other option you can use is to use a potato peeler. And you can actually go through and peel all your vegetables all the way down to the core. And you can use those shavings, and they'll actually cook a little bit better and faster that way. Then on to the food. Today, I'm gonna be using just some ground hamburger. I've got onions, carrots, and potatoes. And then one of my favorite things to add for just a little bit of sweetness and extra moisture when we're cooking is we're actually gonna throw in some apple. And then we're gonna get ready to start prepping all of our ingredients. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and prep our vegetables. We're gonna wanna make sure they're cut up nice and thin so that they cook evenly. Just make sure to watch your fingers where they are when you're using your knife. And now we'll move on to our potatoes. You can either peel yours, but I personally like to leave the skin on for a little bit of extra flavor and texture. Now on to our onions. Make sure you peel off the outer papery layer. It won't be very tasty later on. And last, but certainly not least, is our apple. Now we're going to start assembling our hobo dinners. So we've got our aluminum foil, and if you've looked at your aluminum foil, you probably see it has a really shiny side, a slightly less shiny side. We want to have the shiny side up. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to tilt the edges up just a little bit to make sure stuff doesn't start falling out on the floor. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of oil down on the aluminum foil, just so things don't stick, and we can get the potatoes a little bit crispy. The first thing I'm going to put down is some of our sliced potatoes, because they take the longest to cook, and I don't like crunchy potatoes. I want to make sure they get nice and cooked through. The next thing we're going to add are our carrots for the same reason. We don't want to have crunchy carrots by the end of this. The next thing we're going to add is our ground beef. Now, if you don't eat meat, that's just fine. You can throw in whatever other type of protein you want to, or leave the protein out and go with just vegetables. All of it will be really good at the end. We're going to want to break this up into nice little pieces so that it cooks evenly. And now, before I do anything else, I'm going to go wash my hands because I was just touching raw meat. The next layer we're going to add is our seasoning. As our meat cooks, all the juice is going to run down, so it'll carry that seasoning with us. We're going to throw our garlic salt on here, as well as our red pepper flakes. These are just left over from the last time I got pizza. And then our final touch, we're gonna put those apples on top so that they don't get too cooked and all their juice can run down throughout our hobo dinner. Now all that's left to do is wrap it up. As we fold this up, we wanna make sure it stays nice and flat so it can cook evenly, as well as we wanna seal it well so that none of those juices leak out. And there we have it. Now, we just have to cook our delicious dinner. Now we're just gonna preheat our oven to 375. Or you can throw it on the grill for a little while. Now while our hobo dinners are cooking, we can't forget about dessert. Of course s'mores are your go-to classic camping dessert, but sometimes you want to mix it up a little bit. So today we're gonna make some roasted apples. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab an apple and we're gonna cut it in half. The next thing we need to do is clear out the seeds from the inside. So be really careful with your knife and just trim them on out. Now that the seeds are removed, we're gonna go ahead and score our apple. So pretty much make it look like a checkers board inside with little knife slits so that all the good stuff can soak down into it as we cook. Now we're gonna add all the tasty stuff. There are so many options here and you can get creative. Peanut butter would be amazing. Chocolate syrup or chocolate chips, great. If you visited your grandma recently and have any of those little soft caramels left over, throw them in there, they're gonna be amazing. But today we're gonna stick with one of the simplest and one of my favorites. Just some good old butter and cinnamon. Spread it on around nicely. So now we're just gonna put them together and get them wrapped up here in some aluminum foil. Now we're ready to go. Either throw it on the grill, in the oven, or on a campfire. Now these have been in the oven for about 30 minutes. Let's take a look at how they turned out. That looks great. As you can see, our potatoes are kind of translucent, our apples are nice and soft, and our meat is nice and brown so that we know it's cooked through. Let's take a look at that apple. And there we've got our apple. Nice and soft, melty butter. Now, one thing to remember, this apple doesn't take quite as long as our hobo dinner. And there we have it. We're bringing home some of the tastes and smells of camp right to your kitchen. Hope you've enjoyed learning a classic camp recipe this week. Join me again next week as we look at some activities to explore the world around us. And remember, you can always bring a little bit of camp home with you.